I'm balancing my camera on one of the most precarious tower of stuff I have ever built. So first of all, let's all hope that I don't lose my pretty pricey and pretty new camera. But other than that, hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Lily and today we have the episode 6 or 7 of the knitting podcast. I don't remember because I film these monthly and it's been more than a month since I have last filmed. It's a long time, I don't remember things. I do these in larger intervals because I don't knit that often, especially in the past month where I have picked up quite a few hobbies that aren't quite fiber art. So I haven't been knitting too much, but it has been a long time, so I do have quite a bit of things to share. I have two finished objects, both of which weren't even whips in the previous episodes, they're brand new. I started and finished them in a month, and I also have some familiar works in progress. I also have news, I guess, of some of the projects that I want to put in limbo for certain, or I want to frog, or I want to straight up just abandon. And I will talk about them in the end. But without that out of the way, let's start with my first finished object. This is really cool. This is actually a crochet project. This is my first ever crochet work. I learned it from scratch from YouTube, and I bought the yarn and everything from a kit at my local craft store. So it's really cool. I think it turned out really well for a first. I don't remember the kit's name or the company that produces it, but I will put it in the description. I believe if I do enough googling, I can eventually figure out what did I buy. But basically it's a kit that supplied me with the yarn and the stuffing and also the eyes for this stuffed fox plushie. I had to use my own crochet hook, but I did have one that I bought for fixing my knits. So that all worked out well. This one required a 3.0mm hook, and I actually had that just by pure coincidence. So that's all cool. The yarn is, I think, 75% polyester and 25% yarn, like wool. Yes, 75 polyester, 25 wool. And it is sort of a chain net yarn, I guess. And I am guessing the white chain net center part is the polyester and the fluffy colored part is the actual wool. It is really soft to the touch. It has the fuzziness of real wool. It feels like a 100% wool yarn, so I'm really happy with it. The kit only costed me 25 Canadian dollars, I think, and it came with two 50-gram balls of the main yarns, one white, one orange, and a bit of black yarn, and also the stuffing and all that. So I feel like this is a fairly justified price. It would be really cheap if the yarn were 100% wool, but it's not something like I'll be wearing, so honestly, I am happy with the product and the price. Onto the project itself, I thought this would be a more beginner kit than it actually was. So it did have printed out instructions in multiple languages that are to the detail of every single stitch. So it tells you in round 1 you do these, in round 2 you do that. It lists everything out. Like you do 3 single crochets and then 3 increases and 3 more single crochets and etc. So it spells out every single stitch you do, but it doesn't tell you how to do each stitch, which I feel like would be really neat if it put into the pattern so I didn't have to do my entire YouTube crochet school that took me 2 hours, which honestly wasn't long, and honestly a YouTube video is probably better than written instructions in terms of quickly teaching a beginner how to crochet. So honestly nothing to complain there, just my expectations were misaligned. It still turned out to be a very detailed, very easy to follow set of instructions. It is mostly single crochet, which I managed to get the hang of pretty quickly after like the first 5 rounds. I did have to look it up on YouTube how to do it, as I've mentioned, but since this entire thing is basically made of just single crochets and increases and decreases of single crochets, I basically got the practice pretty early on, and I was able to finish this with relatively neat and even stitches, as you can see here. I feel I did pretty well on the back. Like, it looks even. The head part was the first part I did, which is why this fox has a really crooked nose, as you can see. It tilts to the right. When it looks straight on, the nose seems to be lopsided, and that is because it is lopsided. But that is my first ever project once again, so I am being very graceful on myself, and I am being very graceful on this project, and I think it is still super cute. On the tail part, there are like 9 double crochets in total, and that's all. The rest are all single crochet. So honestly, I would still call this a very beginner-friendly project. What else is there to talk about? Oh yeah, other than not knowing how crocheting works and messing up the nose and making it super lopsided, I also sewed on the legs very asymmetrically. So as you can see, nose, belly, tail, they all kind of line up, and the legs are just on a 30-degree angle to the actual perpendicular line where they're supposed to be on. So now when I try to prop it up and let it sit, it looks like it is looking sideways to the right, or if you're facing it to the left, I guess, and I think that's actually super cute. Like, obviously I didn't intend it, it was just me being very unobservant when I'm doing things. But I feel like it's not something I hate, and it's definitely not something I want to fix. I feel like this actually unintentionally gives it quite a bit of life, and I am quite liking how this fox looks. It's really cute. A thing, like I guess a pattern modification that I did do is instead of sideways, I decided to sew on the tail pointing upwards. So in the pattern, the tail kind of would look like this. It kind of drops to the side, which I guess is less tiring for the fox, but I decided that like a pointy upwards tail is cuter, so I just sewed it on pointing upwards. So I basically twisted it 90 degrees when I sewed it on. The actual crochet part doesn't change at all. So the way you make this is you make every single part separately, and then you stuff it, and then you assemble it. So the actual crocheting part doesn't change at all. The modification is done at the sewing it together stage. And I also didn't look up a tutorial on how to sew it together. I just kind of went with it. I feel like even though I have never crocheted before, by just being a knitter, I have some bit of intuition with how fiber arts work. So basically, I kind of just guessed how to do increases and decreases with single crochet, and I kind of guessed how to sew on a crochet part to another crochet part, and I think I got the increases and decreases correctly because they look sort of neat. Like, it doesn't look weird at all, so I'm guessing I did it. And the sewing edges look not the cleanest, but it's on a plushie that has a pretty stone-washed texture to the fabric, so all is well. I think I did really good. I'm gonna pat myself on the back, and I really like the finished object. It is really cute, the yarn is a beautiful color, and the pattern is designed really nicely. I would recommend this kit and this company to anyone who is very new to crochet or haven't crocheted anything at all yet. I feel like a plushie is something that's going to look cute regardless of how beginner you are, because of the humanoid and like the face that's on the... I'm explaining this really weirdly. What I'm trying to say is that a plushie is going to look cute even if it's not neatly made. So once you complete a plushie, you probably are going to think that it looks nice, and that is probably going to encourage you to crochet more things such as garments and bags and all that typically crocheted stuff, I guess. At least for me, I am now looking forward to crocheting a top or a bag. I am already trying to crochet a tiny pouch for all of my rock collections. I have a pet rock and all of that. So I really love this. This is my gateway to crocheting things, and I am so excited to do more stuff with this new skill of mine. However, moving back to a skill that I am much more familiar with and you guys are probably here to hear me talk about, these are the Mercenary Gauntlets by Flying Out Loud Design. I made these with roughly half a skein of cottage merino by Walk, W-A-L-K capitalized, and this is the colorway claret, which is a variegated cool-toned wine red color. It is a 100% superwash merino yarn, and when you're knitting it, it actually feels almost like a synthetic yarn, and I don't mean it in a bad way. I think that is mostly due to this is, I don't know how to call it, but it's not one of those stranded yarns. It's like one big like fiber of yarn, like one big strand of yarn loosely twisted into evenly shaped strands. I am explaining that terribly once again, but basically it's not composed of multiple strings, it's just one big kind of loose fibrous woolly strand. It's like a single strand yarn that is fingering weight thick. So hopefully some of what I just said makes sense, because it didn't make sense to me now that I'm thinking about it. But all in all, I really like this yarn. I think the red is a really beautiful color. It used to be the same color as my hair, but my hair has since faded as I wash it and I'm too lazy to re-dye it. So yeah, when I bought it, it was the same shade as my hair, which is really cool. And the pattern is also really cool. So it's called the Mercenary Gauntlet, which means it does look like a gauntlet. This part has decreases at this round-ish, so you cast on quite a bit of stitches, you do a nice lace pattern here, and then you decrease when you reach the wrist part. And on the wrist part, there's actually two garter stitch like pearl bump borders, which makes it look super neat as well. I'm making mine in a variegated yarn that's almost striping, so it's less obvious, but trust me, it looks really cool. I feel like I should have used this yarn for a different project and made this Mercenary Gauntlets with a plain, like a solid colored yarn, but I still do think that these are already beautiful, and I'm really happy with them. The reason I said I would have used a solid colored yarn just because there's so many details on here. And I feel like if the details get showcased better, it will be so much prettier. Like for example, there's also laces up the thumb gusset on the side, which we kind of cannot see on camera with my yarn color of choice. But it is a really neat design feature that I'd love to be more visible, I guess. As I've mentioned, I used half a skein. I actually used 0.4 skeins, so that's 40 grams. This skein is 100 grams for 360 meters, if I haven't mentioned before. And that means you can most definitely make 2 pairs of these gloves or anything of a similar size. The mercenary gloves themselves, mercenary gauntlets themselves, are one size, and it does fit me really well, and I think I have a pretty standard sized hand. It's not like, it might be on the larger side compared to the average, but it's not like exceptionally large or anything, and these fit me really well. So I think unless your hand is extremely large or small, you shouldn't need to change the size too much for it to fit your hand well. What else is there to talk about? I didn't make any pattern modifications at all. I would have if I were to knit this again. I would make this flared out like arm part way more flared, because right now when I put it on, it sort of just hugs my wrist pretty snugly, which can be a look, of course. I think it does look nice, but I would prefer this to be a true flare. So if I were to remake this, I probably would dramatically increase the number of cast-on stitches and do a lot more decreases. So I truly get that flowy, like almost fantasy core gauntlet look. But all in all, I'm really happy with this. I feel like if the occasion is correct, I would knit these as gift knits, because these only took me like a week to finish. Granted, I was really excited about both the yarn and the pattern, so it felt like a really quick knit to me. But honestly, fingerless gloves are just fast knits in general. Like, they are actually just fast knits, and I feel like they make perfect gift knit pattern options. This pair of gloves has actually inspired me to kind of freehand a pair of fingerless gauntlet style gloves that will be loosely based on the Mercenary gauntlets pattern, which means I cannot actually write it out and sell it as my own even for free. I feel like that's kind of weird, since the inspiration clearly comes from someone else's pattern. I'm pretty sure the pattern is free, but still, I feel like that's just wrong. But for myself, I'm definitely thinking of making something that doesn't have all these lace but has a much more flared arm part. I'm still recording, I didn't stop recording. So I almost accidentally shut off my recording, thinking that I was starting it again, but thankfully it didn't happen. Anyways, I am back, and here is a work in progress that you guys probably haven't seen for a long time, since it stayed in my apartment in Montreal this entire summer and I didn't get to work on it at all while I was back home at my parents' place. So this is the Reading Cardigan by Brooklyn Tweed, and I am using 8 balls of the rerum natura Gilliat in the shade aubépine, which means hawthorn, I recently found out. It is a beautiful kind of cool toned red. No, actually it's hard to say whether it's cool toned or warm toned. It really depends on the light. In my room light, I'd actually say it's more orangey, but under shadows it definitely shows as cool tone, so I guess this is a true red. It's on the slightly deeper side compared to a bright red, and I think this is a beautiful color. Of course I didn't choose it since I am making this cardigan for my partner, so they chose the yarn and the pattern. And I approved of it, and I started knitting this a few months ago, I guess. I have already made very decent progress. This is technically halfway done, judging from the quantity of yarn that I still have left. I bought 8 balls of the Gilliat yarn, which is 100 grams each, and it is a worsted weight 100% wool yarn, which makes it more than 1,000 meters. Let me just confirm the numbers real quick, because I don't keep those on top of my head. So this yarn is 100 grams for 250 meters, and having 8 balls is precisely 1,000 meters. I think I planned on making the tall version of this cardigan. So basically this pattern by Brooklyn Tweed, they have a cropped, a classic, and a tall version of this pattern that is all available in the same PDF. And the difference is basically the length of the cardigan, and the shaping and buttonhole placement is slightly different depending on how long you're planning to make it. I'm making the size 4, and I plan on making the tall version, but this Gilliat yarn is kind of expensive, at least where I live. It is like $22 each, and 8 balls is already getting expensive, so I just decided to get 8, even though I would have needed 9.5, and knit something that is in between a classic and a tall, I guess. So the way I knit upper body garments is I finish the yoke according to instructions, so whether it's a raglan or a drop shoulder or a saddle shoulder or whatever, I knit until I join the armholes, either in the round or in case of a cardigan, like flat. But I knit until the armholes are distinct, and then I finish the ball that is currently on hand most of the times, and then I stop knitting the body and I move on to making the sleeves. And once I'm done with both sleeves, I will go back to finishing the body. This way I can make sure that if I run out of yarn, what's going to happen is that my body is going to be shorter and more cropped, but my sleeves will be as long as I want and symmetrical. I feel like that is always more preferable over having asymmetrical sleeves or overly short sleeves, so that is what I always do, and that is what I'm doing right now. So the body has taken me 4 balls, so this much is 4 balls, which doesn't look like a lot, but considering how this is a very large cardigan, I'll try it on me so you can see how large it actually is for a average height female. It is very oversized. And also the collar, like the collar band, is folded over, so it is extra thick. And this is also a brioche, so it's extra thick. So 4 balls is actually enough to reach my... I cannot stand up without making noise. Hopefully that wasn't too loud. 4 balls is actually enough to make a cropped body for me. I'm definitely going to make this longer. I'm probably gonna make it like at least until this part. At the least, because this is definitely going to be way too cropped on my partner. And as you can see, I am already starting to make the sleeves with... oh, it's this sleeve. I'm already starting to make the sleeves with the 5th ball. You can see my circular needles here. I just started today, actually. And I think this is going pretty well. When I just started this, like when I was still on ball 1 and 2, I had a fear that I definitely would have needed way more yarn, because I think the first ball only got me through like half of the raglan increases, and I was panicking. I was like, this is tiny, and I can definitely not make an entire cardigan out of 8 balls. But now that I realized how large the yoke actually is, that was some substantial progress, and right now I am really confident that 8 balls will be enough to at least make the classic length version, if not the tall version. So I am working on this pretty frequently, and it is growing as I wished, and there's not too much to say about it. I don't think I really did pattern modifications, other than where I messed up my stitch count and had to compensate for it by doing some decreases under the armholes, and also moving the back shaping stitch marker over by 1 on one of the sides. So technically right now this is very asymmetrical, but if I don't talk about it, no one will know about it, and that is what I'm hoping. Another mistake that I've done very early on is that one of the back raglan increases branches off from the wrong place, but I cannot even find it right now. So honestly, that is also a very tiny mistake, I guess. It's somewhere, I know it's there, because it used to bother me so much that I did the increase incorrectly. But now looking at it, if I'm needing to spend this much effort just to locate the mistake, it honestly isn't a big deal. I feel like this project is the project that is going to teach me dropping perfectionism is good for our mental health. Another non-mistake but still different thing I have done compared to the pattern is that when I added in the optional buttonholes, I chose to add the buttonhole on both sides of the folded collar band. So if you follow the pattern strictly, what you will end up with is invisible buttonholes. So when you are wearing the cardigan, the front band will be just perfectly straight and you wouldn't see the buttonholes here. And you would still have the buttonhole on the inside so that you can button your cardigan up without having the buttons be shown. Now, I don't want that. I feel like the buttons will actually add to it aesthetically. So basically, I just created the buttonholes on both sides of the folded collar band, and I decided to sew one pair together just to see. It works really well. It looks like a really neat buttonhole. I haven't sewn these parts because honestly I don't usually do the sewing before I finish everything else, but I just really wanted to see I just really wanted to see if this will work, and it did work. So I'm really happy about that. You might have also noticed that the buttonholes are comparatively large. That is because I'm using 4.5 centimeter in diameter buttons, which are huge, which are also chosen by my partner, so if it looks terrible on the cardigan, it is their fault, they'll be wearing it, it's their cardigan. But yeah, I feel like honestly it wouldn't look too bad. I had to space out the buttonholes more than the pattern suggested, so I guess I did do more pattern modifications than I thought. I had to space them out a bit more because if the buttons are wider, they're also gonna be taller. So I had to move the space to be larger than the pattern suggested. I think the pattern called for like 16 or something rows. I did 24. But anyways, I am already at the third buttonhole. That is where I finished the fourth ball of yarn. And I picked up the sleeve stitches on hold as I started the fifth ball. Yeah, that's how to put it. Oh, another modification that I did. I keep remembering things that I've done, and it comes to me as I talk. But anyways, another thing that I did differently is I moved every single arm shaping decrease to the underarm side. According to the pattern, you would have done quite a bit of shaping on the opposite side of where I'm doing it. So the decreases will almost be like a feature of this pattern, and there will be visible decreases on the top of the shoulder, so that goes down here. And I just don't think my brioche increases and decreases look neat yet. So I just opted to hide them somewhere that's less visible and hope it will work well. The decreases are worked kind of alternatingly. So on one round you do like one decrease, and on the next round you do two decreases, and then for the next two rounds you do one decrease. Like for the next two decrease rounds you do one decrease, and for the one after that you do two decreases, and so on. So I guess overall, like in the grand scope of things, it makes an even slope, but I am kind of worried that it will make it a bit more like stepped. But if the pattern says so, I feel like it's going to work well. I'm just going to follow it. Right now I am only on row 21, so I've only done two decreases so far. As you can see, hopefully, this is what I meant by one decrease. So as you can see, there's only one joined row of brioche here, and on this most recent decrease there are two joined rows of brioche, so that's a double decrease as it says on the pattern. Each decrease actually decreases 2 stitches because it is a 1x1 rib pattern, and in order to maintain the rib you have to do that. So it is decreasing kind of rapidly, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. I feel like it might be too quick, and I haven't started doing it, but I do planning on dragging the decreases at a slower rate than the pattern suggests. So that's a future modification that I will be doing, but I haven't started doing yet because so far the first two rounds are slightly different from the first two decrease sections are slightly different from the rest. So I've decided to only change the rate of decrease once it has stabilized into a stable pattern. But all in all, that's kind of all I have to say for this cardigan. It is not made for me, so me trying it on will not offer too much insight on how this is supposed to fit. If you're planning on making a hugely oversized cardigan that is in brioche, this is what it will look like, I guess. Like this. And I am guessing you only need 4 balls for the body if you are a girl who is, or if you're anyone actually that has roughly my dimensions, which is 165 centimeters, that's 5'4", 5'5", and I am 130, well no, sorry, 140 pounds, which is 65, oh there's a fruit fly, 65 kilograms or something. I don't remember, but that's my dimensions, and that's how this cardigan fits on me right now. It is extremely baggy. I can fold this collar over like my entire front body, which does suffocate me, so I don't recommend it. It's also really hot, so oops, sound. So I'm going to stop talking about this huge chunky knit for now and move on to my summer knit whips. Alright, so this is the Camisole number 9 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. I am making the size medium with 3 balls of Knitting for Olive no waste wool in the shade slate green. The wool is a 50-gram ball for 225 meters. It is 50% recycled wool plus 50% new merino, and it is just ever so slightly more rustic than the Knitting for Olive merino wool, and you may question that as a choice for a summer knit, but my plan for this is actually just a layering piece during the slightly cooler seasons such as spring and fall. Maybe really cool summer days, or as a, I meant to say as like an inner garment to keep me more warm during winter, like under a sweater or something. But anyways, I feel like it is shaping up well. I will insert a picture of me trying it on. It has reached the minimum length where I can try it on and take a picture and post the picture on YouTube without getting completely demonetized. But I do still have a long way to go. I am roughly 1.5 balls down, and I have finished all the collar and sleeve edges. So all that's left is to knit a stockinette tube for the body and then do the body edge and then cast off. This also calls for 2.75mm needles, which is the same that I have used on the Mercenary gauntlets. In the last episode, I talked about how I've set on my pair of 2.75s back home and broke the needle, and this project had to be left on hold until I came back to my own apartment and grabbed my other set of 2.75mm needles. And the moment I came home, I casted on the Mercenary gauntlets because I was really excited about the hand-dyed yarn I got all the way from Europe. So I didn't work on this until I finished the gloves, which was like a week ago. And then once I finished the gloves, I was mostly working on the reading cardigan. So there has been like at most 10 rows of progress on this since you've last seen it. The biggest progress there is to talk about is actually just the needles are intact again. Magic. But other than that, there's really not much to say that I haven't mentioned in the previous episode. The pattern's by My Favorite Things Knitwear. It is a tank top camisole, the way you make it is you cast on somewhere around here, you knit with increases either the front or the back first. I think you do the back first. You knit a really thin strip with increases until gradually you join the two straps together with some extra cast on stitches for the back or the front. Genuinely cannot remember which one I did first. And then you pick up stitches where you cast it on very initially, and then you knit down the other side. And then you continue until we get to join the underarms and start knitting it around. It's a very basic construction, but it is turning out super well. I think the one noteworthy feature is the way the collar and the armhole edges are done. So it is a folded, I guess, collar. You knit this on 2.0mm needles, tiny needles for the neat look. That's not the key point. The key point is it folds outwards instead of inwards. So once you get to the collar, you start purling all the way around, so the stockinette side is on the inside. So when you fold it outwards, the actual stockinette side will be on the outside again. And then you actually don't like knit it together. You cast off first, and then you take a sewing needle and the yarn, and then you kind of sew it together with the starting edge of the collar. So because there is extra sewing and also because it's on the outside, it creates this border which wouldn't be seen on any other inward folding designs. It is relatively thick, pretty even, pretty substantial, and I feel like this is a really neat design feature since otherwise there is so little fabric on this work. I feel like this substantial like neckline and armhole line design has given it some sort of specialty. But other than that, there really isn't too much I can talk about, since the only progress is knitting in the round stockinette for 7 rounds. So I will just move on to another work in progress that I didn't touch at all. It is buried at the very bottom of my knitting basket, and I cannot quite fetch the ball of yarn is attached to it. Never mind, here we go. So this is the Camisole number 4 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. I am making the size large, I believe, with 2 balls of Knitting for Olive Merino in the shade Midnight. I'm also on the body for this one. This is a slightly looser cardigan, not cardigan, camisole, not by design, just by my personal choice. As you can see, I sized up one size for this. I usually knit medium for My Favorite Things Knitwear. I have chosen to knit large, even though the sizing is basically the same as her other patterns. This is a triangular top. It has 2x2 broken ribs, and the way you make this is you knit the 4 triangles first, and then you join the first 2, you knit back and forth until you get to join the other 2, and then you knit in the round. And then in the end you will do I-cord straps for this one. I already have a camisole number 4. I made it with Knitting for Olive Merino in the shade Dusty Artichoke, which was a brighter green than I imagined when I ordered the yarn online. So now I'm casting on this even less saturated color because I really liked the design and I really want a neutral toned camisole in my wardrobe. There's absolutely nothing else to talk about. I did not touch it since I last mentioned it. The majority of the progress has been done when I was on my trip in Europe, since this is the only knitting project I have brought. And yeah, honestly, I just will not waste your time talking about something that I didn't touch in the past month. And now I will take a second drinking break, and if you're still interested, I'm going to talk about the Purge, where I abandon projects and start anew for my mental health and for my storage and for my yarn stash and for my sanity. which is included in my mental health. Clearly, I need a break from talking, so I'm gonna go take that break and I'll be back. I think I tied these strings on my top too tightly, so as the day goes by, it's actually starting to pull my neck forward and hurting my spine. So I'm going to speed up the talk and change ASAP. It is currently 10 p.m, so it's been a day for me, so this is very necessary. So without further ado, let's get started. I am purging a lot of projects that I know I don't like the finished objects of, or I won't work on, or I just simply lost interest and will never come back. The first one is the Stockholm sweater by Petite Knit, which I am making with the long 120 Merino in a grey color that is probably called something fog, London fog or something, I don't remember. The reason I am purging that is because the Stockholm sweater was meant to be knit with one strand of fingering weight hair and one strand of mohair, and since I hate mohair, I chose one strand of DK weight yarn to knit the entire thing. And it didn't turn out well. The fabric was significantly different. The gauge was off even though the gauge swatch wasn't off, and I had nowhere near enough yarn to finish the thing, even though I did my length by I did my calculation by length multiple times to confirm that it was the right quantity if I calculated based on how long of a strand of yarn I would have needed. I think I was making the size medium, and I had 9 balls of the long 120 Merino, which is 120 meters for 50 grams, which is not a lot thinking about it, but it was still more than 1,000 meters and probably should have given me something that is a decently sized sweater. So I am just disappointed with my choice overall. Maybe the pattern also included an estimate of yarn quantity that is on the lower side. Maybe I really should have just chosen a different pattern. It is just a stockinette sweater. I had so many options out there. I should have just chosen one that recommended a DK weight yarn to begin with instead of doing the entire mohair replacement thing. That project does not spark joy, so I packed it in a bag, and while my mom was driving me to school this year, I gave the bag to her and told her, please bring this back, I don't want to see it for the next half of a year. So she did that, and I don't have it anymore, and honestly I feel so light now that it's gone from my yarn basket. I will eventually recycle the yarn. I will frog the entire thing and do something with it, or otherwise I might just bite it and finish the project and gift it to one of my smaller sized cousins, because it is nicely knit. Like, it's a nice sweater, it's just way too small for me and not what I wanted. And I might purchase a bit more yarn to finish the bottom of the sweater. Due to the way I do things, which is, as I have already described, yoke then sleeves then body, I have enough yarn to finish both sleeves very symmetrically, so if I get new yarn and there's a slight difference in color, it will just show up as like a mildly different toned lower part of the body, which I feel like is not unacceptable, especially if I'm gifting it for free to a relative that I am very close with. So both are possibilities for the future of the sweater, the Stockholm sweater, either being frogged or being finished and gifted straight away. But either way, I don't have to worry about it for the next half a year. Probably for the next year, because I also don't want to touch it when I'm home for Christmas. I can foresee that much. So there's that. A second thing that is somewhat recent in our memory is the field mittens. I have finished one glove. I have one more glove to finish. I used a really precious cashmere plus possum down yarn that I got from Europe, and I was planning on gifting the pair of mittens to my mom, who has the habit of wearing mittens when she drives. I chose a color that is extremely similar to the sweater number 15 I've made her, which is, I think I used Dusty Aqua or something. No, Dusty Dove Blue from Knitting for Olive for the sweater number 15. So that's roughly the color of the field mittens as well. My problem with the field mittens is I chose a lace weight yarn in brackets, parentheses. No, wait, that's not what these are called. What are those called? I'm tired. Anyways, I chose a lace weight yarn that I personally would have considered them to be light fingering, but they are labeled as lace weight. They are much thinner than regular fingering weight yarn. And I think that made all of my imperfections clearer, since the yarn is thinner and like the stitches even out by themselves a bit less. And also, I either just couldn't count when I knitted the first glove, or the pattern has some mistakes, but the stitch counts per round is not adding up. And also, they didn't offer a chart or anything. So I had to follow the stitch by stitch instructions, and at some point my math went off by 1, and my pattern just wouldn't line up, and I had to think back. And that was really annoying because this delicate, high quality, expensive yarn is also not the strongest because, you know, soft. So it broke twice while I was trying to think, and I had to join it back, and it was really annoying and all that, and the finished object was also not neat. And worst of all, it didn't fit my mom's hands. So as I've mentioned when I was talking about my Mercenary gauntlets, I have pretty average sized hands, maybe slightly larger, but my hands fit most one-size gloves written for women. My mom's hand is slightly longer, slightly thicker, slightly wider, just all in all, slightly larger than mine in all dimensions. So the field mittens sort of fit me, but even then it was on the tighter side and just didn't fit her at all. And I couldn't do anything about it because I'm already using a thin yarn, and sizing up would make the stitches look even worse, like sizing up the needle size. And if I were to redo I have to actually add more stitches to the pattern. I'm not sure if I could because it would just be very confusing. So even though I still have enough yarn to finish another pair of fingerless mittens, I think, I'm going to frog the one field mittens that I currently have finished, and I will recycle the yarn and I will make something else out of it that is preferably something more vanilla, like maybe just a stockinette fingerless gloves. Maybe I'll do some modifications on the penny gloves and make a pair of that, so that I can size up by sizing up by adding more stitches. I truly cannot speak anymore. I should end this soon before everyone goes away. Yeah, anyways, I'm planning on choosing a simpler pattern so I can simply add more stitches and make it fit my mom better. But for now, I had my fair share of frustration working on the field mittens the first try, and I don't want to think about it for the next year as well. So those are also back home. I started them back home and I just didn't bring them here at all. And the last thing I want to talk about is the cold white socks, which you probably have already forgotten. Let me grab it. Cold white socks. I finished this one, and I have not worked on the next one for like half a year. The reason being, I worked this up with 2.5mm needles when I usually do 2.25 for socks, and it makes the 3x1 broken rib pattern look so terrible. Is it broken rib or regular rib? Might be regular rib, I don't even remember. But I feel like, so basically this is what it looks like when I'm actually wearing it. This is the fabric density, and I think it looks really bad. And the shame of it being, I really like the yarn color. I really liked my accent yarn color as well. It is some leftovers from a hand-dyed skein of fingering weight sock yarn. and the main yarn is the Long Jawol sock yarn in white pearl or something. It's a beautiful yarn, super comfortable, super, like, the color is nice. It's just that the finished fabric is so loose and looks so, like, wobbly. So what I'm thinking is, since I definitely have enough yarn left, I will just start on a new pair that is the same design with 2.25mm or even 2mm needles. And I might frog this for the future just to get all these yarn back, or I might use this as a Christmas sock, like on a fireplace or something. But I'm definitely not going to continue on the second pair of these. It will just be a waste of my time because I really don't like how the pattern is turning out to be. I feel like I can improve a lot of things by simply sizing down a needle size, and that is what I will do when I cast on this anew. But anyways, that is for today. I have talked about quite a bit of projects, I guess, mostly my 2 finished objects and my purge that is going to happen. I am really happy to get my hands on the reading cardigan again. I'm really happy that I started crocheting, and I am really happy that I decided to do the purge for my mental health and also my storage space. My neck is actually being cut through by this top string, so I'm going to go change right now before I pass out. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I hope you will come back for more. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content of me rambling, and I will see you next time.